Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for waiting. My name's Simon Sherborne and welcome to this week's Avid Audio Community Plugin webinar. We run these about once every 2 weeks, just covering different new workflows, interesting features and talking to different guests. And this time we are focusing on Dolby Atmos mixing for TV. We've done quite a bit of coverage of Atmos for movies and for music more recently, but really the driving force for Atmos at the moment has been in TV production. And we're very lucky this week to have Nick Fry from UK Post House, The Farm, with us to answer our questions. So before we start, I'm going to, hi Nick, good to see you. Okay, so I'll introduce Nick in a moment. Before we do that, I just want to give you some information about how this works. We're actually using Zoom to run the webinar, and we're also streaming off onto YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So welcome if you're there. I think we do have some room in the Zoom room if you did want to jump in. But either way, you should be able to ask questions to Nick on any of the platforms. So I'm just going to show you a couple of things to do on your screen. So what we'd recommend is that if you're on Zoom, if you choose the gallery view rather than the speaker view, then you'll be able to see both Nick and me at the same time. We won't just keep flashing up and down. And if you're seeing anybody else, there is a setting to hide other participants. We actually have it, I think, switched so that you can so we've got it switched so that you can't be seen or heard, but you can do Q&A. Can I just double check with our team? I've got a message here saying that there's no audio, so can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Fantastic. So that's the voice of Dave. There's one of the other guys on our team. So Dave and Gil are with me on Zoom here, who will be posing some of your questions. And then on the other social media platforms, we've also got some people from the team. So if you write in the comments, then they will pick that up and send them over to us. So yes, in terms of questions, if you're on Zoom, if you use the Q&A button, there is chat and raise hand functions. But if you just type into the Q&A function, then we will pick those questions up and we'll probably save them up for Nick after we've had a chat. And but if you've got any questions that aren't directly for Nick, then someone on the team will probably answer those. Okay, right, brilliant. So let me introduce Nick. So Nick is here from The Farm. So if you're in the UK, like I am, then The Farm needs no introduction. They're one of the kind of giant, most established audio post houses in the country, working on a lot of mainstream entertainment and drama for all the major networks and streaming services here. So that's half of the team there. Sorry if you're one of the half that didn't get in the picture. Nick, there's just a quick headshot of Nick there, and some of the things he's been working on, and some of his award nominations. And what I'll do just quickly, just to set the scene before we bring Nick in, I have actually got the Farm lockdown showreel, some of the stuff they've been working on in the recent months, and I'm just going to play you a little bit of that now. Hopefully you will see this. The video might be a bit choppy, but we'll do our best.
Sorry about the cardboard desk. Let's start with some nostalgia.
Oh yeah, we're back in business, baby. Oh yeah, we're back in business, baby.
Check this out.
And let's bring on the talent.
Welcome to our first show.
Oh, I miss you.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the show.
Run, Bobby!
I'm Jay Lysa, and I've got your back.
Fucking hell, man.
When I've seen people standing next to it on the news, it sort of comes up to their waist. How's that going to get up your nose?
Leave me alone, Joe Wicks. You can't make me exercise no matter how handsome you are.
Are you, or have you ever been a doctor?
We're here to talk about art.
Stay home, stay safe.
Okay. Let's pop back to there. All right, Nick. Hello. Can we hear you?
Hello. Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. So thanks ever so much for joining us. So
That's okay, pleasure.
Whereabouts are you? You look like you're at work, but
I'm actually at home currently. I'm actually in my loft, which is my lockdown studio that I've been in since March. Been going into work once a week, but pretty much for the first sort of month, I was based up in my loft. We shipped a load of systems home pretty quickly to about 8 mixers just before lockdown happened, and I was lucky enough to get a system for my loft.
Nice. Yeah, we could probably spend the whole thing talking about that. But,
yeah.
So
it was an interesting time.
Yeah, still is, right? So,
and still is. Yeah, still is.
But people are back in at the main facility doing stuff now. Yeah.
Yes, they have. We've had people throughout lockdown working in the facilities. They've remained open, obviously all COVID secure and everything. But we got as many people out as we could, just to reduce the footfall through the facilities. But there has been a kind of core of guys going in all the time. The ones that live near to work were obviously much easier for them to get into Soho without having to travel. So those guys have been brilliant and kept the facility going, which has been fantastic with us swanning around at home.
Cool. So maybe you could just introduce yourself, what your role is at the farm and who the farm is. I think everyone in the UK knows you guys, but we have an international audience. So
sure. Well, I've been at the farm for 20 years now. I've been head of audio at the farm for the last, I think, about 4 years. The farm, we've quite a large group of companies. We've got 3 sites across the UK. We've got a site in Manchester, a site in Bristol, and a site in London, which has 3 different sites actually in London. All the facilities we have offer full post-production, so picture, offline picture and audio. And we have currently got 4 Atmos rooms in the group as well. So we have 1 in Manchester, and we've got 3 full home certified studios in London as well. We do post we do post across the board. So we do scripted, non-scripted, a bit of everything, as myself as well, and entertainment. Currently, we've got Britain's Got Talent about to start going through, and various dramas we've been doing. And we've been doing all this through lockdown as well, through, as I said before, a combination of people's homes, people going into the facility, and we've kept going. It's been hard work, but really quite rewarding.
Yeah. So, and you personally, I know you're head of audio, but you are still mixing most of the time.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Right? Yeah. I predominantly mix all the time. Yeah, I'm generally mixing whilst trying to answer lots of emails. That tends to be what I'm trying to do constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I share there's 2 of us that kind of run audios, myself and Nigel Edwards, and we kind of run it together because we've got about 25 people in our team, so there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of audio work going through across all the sites as well, across Manchester, Bristol, and London. And there's a lot of questions constantly. So between the 2 of us, we mix full time, and we can run the department as well. But it's pretty busy. Yeah,
that's awesome. And so, when did you guys start moving into Atmos mixing? Was it something that you were getting asked for?
It suddenly just rocketed. We were, I think it was a couple of years ago, we put it in. We were. Netflix approached us about doing a series about Formula One. Another series were bubbling around, but the first series of Formula One Drive to Survive came around, and Netflix were really keen for us to do it. We'd already looked into getting Atmos. Myself and Ant Kirkland, our senior audio engineer, we'd already looked into it, working how we were going to do it, how the studios could be tweaked to accommodate Atmos. Technically, how we would do it, how we would roll it into our workflows at the farm. And we kind of got Dolby on board very early on because then it was all very new to them as well. They weren't quite sure how it was going to work for the Home Atmos certification. It hadn't been launched yet. It was kind of a work in progress on a bit of paper. I think Dolby would quite agree with that. It was all still very early days. But between us, we kind of got together, worked out a plan, and before about a month before we were due to start the series, I got in touch with Scott Kramer at Netflix. And between us, we kind of we all worked out how we were going to do it. Netflix were also kind of working out their formats, how they wanted Atmos to sound, how they wanted it to be delivered, what the deliverables were going to be, how we were going to deliver to them, how it needed to sound, the formats. We did some tests, got the studios built quite quickly, got Dolby around, had them set up, certified, and then it was a case of going through the process and working out with Scott and the guys at Netflix, what the format was and how we were going to deliver it. During that time, I decided because there's so many mixers at the farm, it's really important that we have templates. We call them bolt-ons, so that any member of the audio staff can pick up a session and open it up and print out stems or do tweaks or mixes. It's really important because we move sessions around a lot. So I wanted to keep that. I wanted to bring that through the whole Atmos process as well. I wanted any of the guys with a quick lesson to be able to pick up an Atmos session and have a go. That was what I was really keen for them, just to have a go. So that was kind of one of the first things we did, was sat down and worked out how we were going to make it available for everyone.
Right. Yeah. So did you adapt your existing rooms for that, or how difficult was that?
We had. It was interesting. We have adapted all our existing rooms. We didn't build any new rooms for this at all. It was a combination of, again, getting Dolby around and in collaboration with Scrub as well, HHB in London, getting them around and working out what kit needed to go in. Dolby were brilliant. They would come around and understand that we can't throw loads of money at this. The rooms need to work within a budget. So they would come around, work out the best ways of doing things. We would tweak and change things here and there. The design process was great as well. We would sit down with them, work out which speakers we could put on the ceilings, because some of our studios aren't that high, so we had to use these very flush ceiling mounted speakers, which are actually look really cool now. So those in a combination with other speakers around the room, and we came up with a kind of 714 system, which works really well and sits in all our studios, and obviously sounds great. It was a really good process. It was a really good a very steep learning curve for us all.
Yeah.
And I think including Dolby as well, and everyone else involved. But what was brilliant, we were very lucky to have 3 studios, very early on in the whole process, to be able to do quite a lot of Atmos work quite quickly.
Yeah, and I think you guys were definitely had those rooms done before it was all ironed out by Dolby as well,
yes.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We were. Yeah, I think the first season we finished the rooms, I think from memory, I think it was end of August, and then I started mixing 2 series for Netflix. It was a series called Turn Up Charlie, which was a scripted comedy drama with Idris Elba in it for them. And then on the hot off the back of that, we were then doing the first series of Formula One Drive to Survive. So these were both being delivered in Atmos, both with very steep learning curves to work out how we were going to do it. And deliver them on time as well and on budget and get it all done so everyone's happy. But it was it was incredibly rewarding and good fun to get it all working. It really was. But it was a lot of jumping around. I remember when we were doing Turn Up Charlie, we were sending mixes up to our Manchester facility to finish off the M&Es, the Atmos M&E mixing, because I was still mixing the series they wanted to deliver to Netflix. So that's how the farm works. We can move things around very efficiently and across the group. And Atmos was no different. Things had to move up to Manchester so the guys could do an M&E up there. It worked really well.
Yeah, no, I know you guys have you like to template hardware and software and make sure that everyone's using the same systems and move things around.
Yeah.
And we can. I know you sent me a couple of diagrams, and it'd be good to look at, get into that kind of sticky stuff. And you've already also mentioned a few things that I know I want to know about, like what the deliverables are, what Netflix, for example, expect, what it's supposed to sound like at the at home when the viewer's watching it. But before I get into that, I'm just kind of curious, how different it is when you've got an Atmos mix? Is it approached differently to how you mixed before, or is it more or less the same process that's been adapted?
It's a similar process. You're as with surround mixing, you know, in 5.1 or 7.1, you are the thing to do is to use the speakers above you as an effect speaker, and not to use them all the time. We learned quite early on that it becomes a bit of a mush if you just fill the space with sound. The down mixes work really well as well. The down mixes are so much more precise and sound fabulous when you compare to. We did some tests early on, mix something at 5.1 and then mix it in Atmos, and the re-renders or the down mixes, which is what they call in the Atmos world. The clarity and the definition was brilliant. So it was a really good way of doing, you know, mixing in Atmos to even just to get great down mixes. Was really good.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I've heard a few people say that. So actually, I think that probably answers a question from my colleague Shri in Dubai. He sent over saying to ask where the down mixes were coming from for stereo, whether they were coming direct from Atmos or
they're all coming straight out of the RMU. So you can all that the RMU is constantly spitting out these down mixes, or what they called in the Atmos land is re-renders. And it's constantly spitting those out. You can set all those up beforehand in the configs of the RMU, which is again what we've done. So we have templates that will coincide with the input configurations on the RMU. So we know we're constantly hearing back a 7.1 down mix, a 5.1 down mix, all the stems as well we can listen to, and all the 2.0 and all its down mixes and all its stems. All you can monitor these all at the same time. You know, listen to them individually. Ultimately, clients still want to hear the mix in stereo, and they still want to hear it in 5.1. So it's really important that you're hearing those constantly, which is what the RMU lets you do. Otherwise, you can all sit back and, you know, do a fabulous Atmos mix, you know, pat each other on the back and go, "Great job, guys." And you haven't listened to it in stereo, you might get a shock, because ultimately we are mixing for TV, so it's got to work on a telly in stereo in people's front rooms. That's the important thing.
That was my next question, actually, is how do you check that? Do you have like a kind of domestic soundbar or TV systems?
Yeah, we very early on we found some sound bars which actually they hang on the side of the TV, and on the back of them has a reasonable sub. So the TV sound we have is a reasonably good sound. It's not a full-on soundbar sound, but it's a good TV sound. I've always tried to make the studios kind of, the TV monitoring kind of in the middle. So, you can only pick something because everyone's TVs at home are different. They listen to it on TVs, they listen to it on PCs, they listen to it on their iPads, their phones. So all you can do is try to aim in the middle and hope that what you're producing at least will stack up across all those different formats. That's how we do it. So it's a reasonable TV monitoring system we've got in the studios, and again we as we do for most of the farm, those TVs are in every single studio we have, and all the systems are identical, so we can move a session around, and if a client goes in a different room, they're not going to sound different. They're going to hear on the same TV with the same speakers and go, that is consistent. That's really important. Otherwise they'll hear on a different TV and it'll sound different again and again, and you'll be constantly chasing your tail.
So in terms of you were talking about down mixing and how it's kind of seems to mixing speaking within Atmos seems to produce a nice down mix. And I know that you were working on The Last Igloo, which I wanted to ask you about, the documentary film, as a kind of commission that was primarily destined for stereo. Is that right? But you worked on it in Atmos.
It was commissioned by the BBC as a 90-minute special about a chap that lives in Greenland, and it was mainly about Greenland and the environment and how it's melting. And so the brief from the BBC was to it has to be very sound led. So there's very little dialogue in it. It was very he obviously speaking his native tongue, so there's very little dialogue. It's more about the environment, the sounds, and obviously the pictures. So it was commissioned in stereo. We had to sit down with the director and the sound recordist, and the sound recordist was really keen to use some Ambisonics recordings. We were chatting away, and also mentioned by the BBC was ASMR. So that sound you get and gives you the tingles and the your hair's stand up on your arms and stuff. So they were really keen to get that. And I said, well, it'd be a great opportunity to mix something in Atmos. I'm sure the distributors would be keen on that as well, because it's kind of future-proofing the program, future-proofing the film. And everyone was cool. Wow, this is a really good idea. I played them some of the Formula One that we'd mixed, and some Riviera, and some of the sort of demos I've been playing with. And they thought, this is just a great idea, a really good idea. The sound, the program really lends itself to this real sound of from Atmos. And we decided to do it in Atmos. I think they got some more money from the worldwide sales, and we mixed in Atmos. It was a great process to mix it in Atmos. Then listen to the down mixes in stereo. They were thrilled. They were absolutely really thrilled with the process. It makes you work harder as well, as with the jump from just mixing in stereo to that jump up into 5.1. It makes you work harder. You can position things around the room more. You're thinking about the sound more. And when you do that, your down mixes sound better, because it forces you to work harder rather than just being a bit lazy and keeping everything in the center. So yeah, the film, we were really happy with the film. The clients loved it. They even booked a screening in the Soho Atmos Theatre the Dolby Atmos Theatre.
I saw that there was some showings of it. Yeah, so it was well worth doing. Yeah.
It was well worth doing, and obviously the distributor was chuffed because they had a full delivery in Atmos as well, so they were very happy. Yeah,
that's awesome. So we've got people are kind of sending in a few questions kind of related to what you're saying. Should we dive into a couple of those, get into the weeds?
Sure.
It's I'll jump in with this one. You're talking about your TV speaker systems that kind of hang on the side of the TV, and someone was asking about the kind of pan width and how you judge that if you've got speakers outside of your TV screen. I guess that has always been something to consider.
They are literally up against the edge of the telly, so it's not that they're further out from the telly. They are actually fixed to the side of the TV, so it gives you a little bit more width. It's a great way of watching stuff back and checking that it's the imaging is correct. They're not like standing up meters away from the TV. They are actually attached to the side of the TV, so it's like having a TV with some decent speakers that we used to have in the old days when TVs were big and had proper speakers attached to the side of them. It gives us that feel back again, but they still feel part of the TV, and the sub is behind the TV, so you don't see the sub, and you only give it a slight feel of the sub.
A couple more studio build questions. So someone asked, were your height speakers from the same manufacturer as your LCRs and surrounds? And
yes, we have used Genelex all around the studios. All our rooms have Genelex active monitoring speakers in them. Across all the farm sites, all the farm studios have Genelex, and so again when you do a certified studio, Dolby make you they specify which speakers you have to do, which size speakers you have in which positions. So you are led by them. You have to put in what they ask you to put in, otherwise you can't get the certification. Right. So they specified they specified the size of speakers, but we wanted to use Genelex, so they just told us which ones to use. So yeah, everything's Genelex.
Someone's asked if you're folding down from 5.1 or Atmos, but I think you already answered that. It's from the Atmos, right? So, and we've already got 2 questions about loudness, so I guess we should rip that blaster off straight away.
There's always plenty of. One of the most things I get asked about is loudness.
I bet. So someone's said. It's actually Mike Ayton, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
I know Mike.
Yeah, hi Mike. Said, how are you handling dynamic range constraints with Netflix, who got dialogue of -27 compared to R128, etc.? How do you get through that, Forrest?
So for loudness, I'm sure everyone's aware, Netflix use a dialogue target of -27. So rather than all UK broadcasters ask you to do -23, but as an overall loudness. So it's you can't have a very loud section with loads of dialogue in it, because it'll make you. The program will do this. It will be very loud, very quiet, ultimately you could still get an average, but it won't be consistent for the viewer. Netflix's view was, okay, we want to use the dialogue as the anchor. So we want the dialogue to always be consistent, and that's what they want mixers to make sure is consistently 27. So you are constantly checking the dialogue loudness and checking it's around 27. Now I tend to mix. I know on my studio what my volume level needs to be, and when I'm mixing for Netflix, I will turn it up so it's a bit louder. Otherwise, I tend to mix the programs too loud. Similarly, when I'm mixing for R128, the studio gets turned down. My hearing it can be so sensitive. I can mix it within a dB. So if I know I'm monitoring at the right level, I know it'll roughly be right. We use Nugent Visalem to do our loudness monitoring with, and we also have R2W meters as well in the studios, which give us a loudness reading. I always keep an eye on them, as you would any metering, but I'm not locked into them all the time. Once I've set up a level in my head and in the room, I can generally match that level. The great thing, the difference is with the Netflix loudness spec is you can be a bit more, you can get a bit more creative with some explosions, some music scenes. They aren't going to drag your overall loudness down, which is what happens with R128. So you can have a bit more fun with it. Again, you need to remember it is for telly, so you don't want people riding out the remote controls all the time. But you can have a bit more fun with the mix, as we did in Drive to Survive. I'm sure people are aware there's some loud bangs and booms in that, which the clients wanted. They wanted a bit more cinematic, and Netflix were happy with that. But again, I'm very aware that it's for telly. So I've had children, and the last thing you want is watching the TV downstairs, and there's huge booms and bangs and waking everyone up. So it's keeping it in check. But that's generally how and the loudness is measured from from an Atmos mix. We would listen. Our templates have the re-renders coming back into them, and on the 5.1 return, I will have a Nugent Visalem meter constantly measuring the loudness. That's how Netflix specify you to measure the loudness of an Atmos mix. It's basically on the 5.1 re-render.
Right. Okay, I've got a diagram here. It might be worth showing your kind of setup. We've got quite a few technical questions coming in. People asking about your template and how you set stuff up. I might just hold on those for a second, because I just ask you about the kind of higher level workflow before I got to that stuff. So in terms of a project, when do you start thinking about Atmos? Does it come through the track layer and editing stage, or is it all done in the mix stage?
It does. We depending on what the show is, something like Drive to Survive is incredibly busy and has a lot of sound added to it, and a really busy track lay. So James Evans, our sound designer supremo, he would track lay that. Again, we're still tracking in our existing 5.1 rooms, but what we did was we would frig the bolt-on we have. So he would kind of listen to it in 7.1 kind of thing. As long as he heard the 7.1 bit of it, we were happy. He would then it just would transfer better into our templates and go into the studios better. Whenever there's an object that he's keen to move around the room or have height, he would put that on separate tracks. All our objects are kept on separate tracks, so they go through the whole mix process. That enables the mixer to see what is specifically an object and what is going to the bed. Also, when you're correcting for loudness, you want to make sure that you are pulling down everything in your session, not just the stuff that go into buses, but also your objects, because otherwise you can mistakenly just pull down your buses to correct any volume changes for loudness and forget to do your objects. So if the objects are clearly labeled, and we make them bright orange as well, so we know they're objects, you can then group everything together and put it down for loudness.
Right.
This is kind of our template. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can see this, but I have actually just shared the template diagram that
just
you
popped
sent.
up.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's a sort of high level view of how you structure a mix. So you're separating.
Yeah, this is a very basic kind of overview of our templates that we use at the farm for Atmos. So we've got our tracks here on the far left. They can be, obviously they're a mixture of dialogue tracks, effects tracks, music tracks. we can decide. I will decide whether I want to send them to a bed or the buses in this instance. So those buses are 712 wide. They
Does
will
that
then
include
go
the dialogue
to
as well? Someone's asked if your dialogue bus is 712 or
I do. I
smaller.
actually do keep it seven. Yeah, I do keep it 712 wide. Again, it's more for templating and for doing all the down mixing and deliverables. We have kept it 712 wide. Again, that was from me building the very first template right back 2 years ago. I think if I built it again, I would probably just make it maybe 5.1 or even
Right.
3. So you tend not to. But again, if it's left at 7.1. then you've got the option to move things around. We learned very on. It's a lot easier to have the template that does everything, and to try and build things whilst you're trying to do it. It's a bit of a nightmare. Plus the fact then someone else picks it up, they're not familiar with it, they don't know it then breaks, and it just becomes a bit of a mess. It's easier to kind of build these constraints in, and everyone's used to working to them, and it works really well. So those 712 buses will then feed to the outputs to the RMU. They're all obviously 712 wide, except the objects, which are obviously monos and a combination of stereos. They'll go to the RMU, and then they'll come back as re-render returns from the RMU into the session, which we have those returns. We keep them on input so we can hear the returns all the time.
Okay.
And they feed our speakers to our telly.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. This is good. You're answering some of the questions that are coming up without me having to ask them, which is very economical. So looking at this, you're only using objects for effects. Is that right? From this template?
No, that's just I ran out of room. I mean, I've used objects for everything. Actually, you'd kind of repeat that for your music objects as well, and for dialogue as well, and for voiceover. For Formula One, we do make dialogue objects. Everything that's in the car, when the guys are chatting in the car to the pits or to the other guys, we put all the radio chat in the middle of the room. So it gives, if you're listening to it in Atmos at home, you get this kind of great feeling of them being in the car with them.
Right.
Similarly, all the effects are given some height. That's one of the things I noticed on Twitter when people listen to it. They can, I love the guys sitting in their cars, and you can hear the talk, the radio chat in the middle of the room. We did that very early on. Steve, one of the other mixers, discovered that, and as long as you're aware that, again, as long as you check the mix down, the mix down is going to work, because it does. When you give dialogue some height, we have noticed that the mix down can be slightly lower. So you just got to keep an eye on that and make sure you don't use your dialogue.
Right.
But no, that isn't just effects objects. That is everything. I tend to send everything now. In the early days, I was just sending effects, but as you get more and more creative and used to the systems, you tend to send everything and have a go with everything, because it's ultimately it doesn't matter. You're just it's an object. Have fun with it. So is there any other sort of particular advantages to using objects that you're taking advantage of? Is it mainly kind of creative positioning? It's positioning, the clarity you get. You get a lot more clarity and definition moving things around the room. A lot of the mixers, when we started doing Atmos, were saying, "Oh, I'm not really keen. I don't think I'm going to bother with Atmos. It's a bit too much to learn. I don't see the point of it." But once they pan something around the room in 5.1, then switch to an Atmos pan, you are really quite surprised by the clarity, and it does move around the room because it is object based. You are moving it around the room as coordinates rather than from channel to channel. There's an incredible difference. And similarly with moving atmospheres around the room, moving effects around the room, anything around the room, it makes a huge difference. It hasn't all got to be about the height thing. It's also about the clarity of the object-based audio. That's the key. It's object-based audio, not channel-based. And once you get that, it's amazing. Really cool. A great format to work in. I love every job that comes in Atmos. I can't wait to do it.
So it is really great fun to work with, isn't it?
It's really great
not
fun.
An insignificant factor.
No. It's actually really good fun. And once you've worked out the technicalities and you've got that in your head and you're happy with technically how you're going to do it and get the workflow through your facility or your home or wherever you are, the actual mixing of it is really good fun. Yeah, because you can have some great fun with it. And as I said, it sounds so much better. It really does. It's a great format, and it's scalable. From a 714 system up to a theatre system up to all the different speakers, rather than it just being channel based. It's object based, which is the key, which is really important.
Yeah. Right, I have tons of questions are kind of streaming in here. So,
okay.
Well, I'm trying to lump them into subjects, but so while we're on the Pro Tools template side, a couple actually. What are you doing in terms of kind of compressors and things like that? Are you using those on object? Do you have like a sort of separate series of buses for affecting the individual objects?
We haven't done that actually. We very early on, all our beds have a limiter on them set to -3. We use a Pro limiter, Avid Pro limiter across all the beds. That helps with most of the loudness at the top. We never have put limiters across all the outputs, across all the objects. We've just tried to keep an eye on it. I figure if you're pushing something that loud, then it's probably not right. So I've kind of taught the mixers to keep an eye on it. And if you can't control, if you've got 3 sounds that are at -3, once they combine in the RMU, they're probably going to hit 0. So there's nothing you can do about that. Netflix accept that. Most people accept you can't control that, but you can keep an eye on it and you can control it. I think if you're banging constantly at 0, into 0 with all your objects, they're probably really loud anyway, and probably going to be taking people's heads off at
home. Absolutely. Just tracking these coming in. Similarly, actually, I see your question, Sam Millie. I'll answer that in a second. The reverbs is my question I always ask, and a couple of people have already asked that. How do you handle reverbs with objects?
We're still using 5.1 reverbs. We haven't jumped into the realm of 7.1.2s and all the other. I think there's some available now. They weren't even available when we started mixing. So kind of all my all the templates we've got still using 5.1. The reverbs will just go to a bed. So unfortunately, they'll stay as channel-based reverbs, 5.1, 7.1, whichever one you want to use.
Right.
We've tended to use 5.1 reverb still. They sound okay, and they sound good. I mean, maybe this year for Drive to Survive, we'll have a look around and see what other plugins are available now in the 7.1.2 world for reverbs. But up until this point, we haven't. And not needed to, but they weren't available. But we'll certainly look to what's out there.
So if you had an object that's sending to a reverb, does the reverb return into the bed? You don't have kind of specific objects for reverb or anything?
No. It'll return through the bed. Yeah. So again, unfortunately, it is compromises. In fact, it is just a 5.1 reverb or a 7.1 reverb, but generally that works pretty well. I mean, if you're returning, you could return. We do return mono reverb sometimes, and we'll move them around we'll link them to the sound, so they will move around as an object around the room. But if it's a generic room Atmos reverb, then it'll be tied to the channels, so 5.1 or 7.1 based.
So sort of a similar thing. Someone's asked, if you're sending a dialogue object out, how does that make it back into the dialogue stem when you deliver? Is that why you have separate beds?
Yeah. So in the RMU, we have set up all our. When you're creating your I/O configuration in the RMU, you make sure it matches your template. So our template, as you've seen, has voiceovers, dialogues, effects, and music in it. Similarly, our input configuration in the RMU will have exactly the same voiceover, dial, music, and effects beds and busing as well. When you create an object or a track in the RMU, you can tag it as a dialogue, as an effect, as a bit of music. So the RMU knows to put that back into the down mix. It's tagged that it's a bit of music or a bit of dialogue. The RMU go, this is a bit of this is an object, but it is tagged as a dialogue track. So I know to route this back down into the dialogue re-renders. That's how it works. It's really clever, really very neat. But again, it's crucial to get all this set up beforehand. I think I spent probably 2 weeks getting all this set up before we started mixing anything. I spent 2 weeks in the studio designing, building our templates, making sure the RMUs matched. We have separate templates for drama and separate ones for documentaries because they both need different things. And it's crucial that your RMU setup matches your templates. If they don't, it becomes a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
But it's a very neat system. It's a really neat system. And for TV, you know, for the film guys, they tend to send everything out of just one bed. So they'll have one bed and everything else will be an object. And that's fine if you've got 3-4 weeks to do all your versioning afterwards. But in TV land, we all know we've got a day probably. So, you know, you need to be able to make your deliverables pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just thrown up your kind of hardware diagram because I've had a few people asking if you're using a separate RMU and if you ever used the software renderer. And
so
this is your kind of drama setup, is it?
This is actually our hardware setup for every room. All the rooms are the same. All our Atmos rooms use this setup. Now this is again, this is 2 years old now, so you can actually, I've been told today actually by Ant, you can actually do away with the second matrix box.
I was going to say that.
You can buy a card now for the matrix, which gives you another two digilinks. But in the days when we did this, they weren't available, so you had to use 2 matrix boxes. But if you kind of ignore those now, it's a very simple system and it's very neat and elegant. We were very lucky, and luckily at the farm, our facility, the main farm facility, we actually put matrix boxes in anyway, so we had them already in the studio, so it was quite easy to add another one in and to add an RMU in. But yeah, all our studios, all our mixing studios have an RMU. We do use the production suite to generate all the stems from, but all the mixing studios have an RMU. That was decided very early on as a sort of group decision to have RMUs in the studios.
Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely.
Yeah.
I've got tons of questions I could keep asking you, but I'm going to stop because a lot of questions have come in. So I think I wonder. Dave, I was just going to say, I'm losing track of questions. So
no, and so I'm kind of trying to keep track of questions and not really listening to you so much. So you may have answered these already, but there's quite a lot coming in about the RMU. So I think lots of questions about which rooms have, you know, the production suite, where you're using the home theatre RMU, whether you might be using the theatrical RMU. So maybe if you could sort of dive into that a little bit, that would cover a lot of the questions that are coming in.
So all our studios are home entertainment only. We don't do theatrical at all at the farm. We only have home entertainment, but they're all certified home entertainment systems. We have when you buy an RMU, it comes with a number of production suite licenses. So we have put the production suite in all our other studios. So if one of the studios is too busy to bounce out some stems, we can send the Atmos session to one of the production suites, and they can just bounce out the stems, limit them, bring them to Pro Tools, limit them, name them, and then bounce them out as deliverables. But we tend to try and do everything in the Atmos rooms where possible. But yeah, when it gets busy, and sort of around now through to the end of March, it gives us the opportunity to move things around if we need to. But we only mix in the RMU studios at the moment.
Good. So I think that covers a fair few of those, which is good. Actually, there was, if you've spotted any, Simon, that you want to jump in with?
Yes. Quite a few in loudness, a few on kind of general setups. There was one really good question actually, which see if I can scroll back to it because I want to credit the asker. Someone, I can't find who wrote it now, but someone said, "What's your favorite Atmos mix that you've heard that wasn't a farm mix?" Just putting you on the spot there.
Oh, what was it? There was a film done for Netflix. Oh, I can't remember what it was called now. And it sounded incredible. Leave it with me. I will remember what the film was called. It was a Netflix only film, and it sounded amazing. it wasn't one of the big Hollywood films, but it was a
Yeah.
smaller film. I think leave with me. I remember what the film name was, but there's more and more Atmos appearing in cinemas, and there needs to be more. It's slowly picking up in films, and more cinemas are getting it installed. But I'd love to hear more films in Atmos, because it is a great format in a cinema. It really is.
Yeah, it's actually quite depressing how few films I've seen in Atmos.
Yeah, it's hard to find them. I go to some screenings, and they can be in Atmos, but it's very rare to get them in Atmos. We need more films in Atmos, and more screens that show Atmos.
That's my problem.
That's
yeah,
the key.
I'm in the Midlands.
I suppose
in
it's
the UK,
investment, isn't it? It's a bit of money they've got to spend, so it'll come. It'll come.
So, a question that popped up there was: are you automating your bus object routing in Pro Tools Mixer, or are you using separate tracks?
We're using separate tracks. So very early on, I did some test mixing, and mainly for loudness, actually. If you do automate your bus object button, you can't then pull everything down from loudness. So we very early on decided to keep objects on separate tracks, and they are allocated as objects only. Because say your program is 2 dBs too loud, you need to group all your bed buses together, and you'll then need to group all your objects together, create a VCA, and pull everything down by 2 dBs to make it the right loudness. If you've got tracks that are going between object and the bed, when they jump to an object, they're not going to get pulled down, because they're going to jump out of the bed into an object, and the VCA won't catch them. So
so you need to use like master faders or another kind of line of routing. There's even a master fader. Your objects aren't going to go via the master fader, so you've got to VCA them. There's no other way of doing it, or mix it exactly to the right number. On a sort of related note, actually, do you get asked for any dipped stems from an Atmos?
We haven't yet, but that has been mentioned.
It's a similar issue, I guess.
It's similar with there's no easy way at the moment. I mean, I'm chatting to Dolby a lot about this. There's no easy way to create a DM&E, so a mix minus narration either. So if you do a final mix in an Atmos final mix with the narration, you cannot, as you would do in a normal session, have your mix minus narration stemming off onto another output. Unfortunately, in an RMU, your final mix is your final mix. You have to close that all down, save your session as, save it as mix minus narration, and then play out, turn off your voiceover, turn your dip fader off so it doesn't dip, and then play out a whole new play out to the RMU as a mix minus narration. There's currently there's lots of ways we're thinking of doing it, but at the moment there's no easy way of doing it. So unfortunately, that does tend to add another play out to your deliverables, which is can be a bit of a pain. But as long as you factor that in right from the beginning and you're aware of that, you've got to make it, and another set of deliverables from that as well. Then that's the only trouble. So
there's a couple more come in a couple of times. So first of all, any thoughts on projector stroke large screen versus television setup with midfield large speakers versus a small and near fields? So in other words, I guess, mixing for movies versus television. So with the screen allowing for the center to be placed inside the image, whilst the television needs a neck craned up, so how do you deal with the sort of, I guess, those differences between, the fact that speakers in a TV are going to be placed outside of the, the picture environment, whereas obviously they're kind of embedded in the screen in a movie theater?
Well, again, we're mixing for TV, so we're not mixing for movies. So we are all our studios are near field studios. None of them are theatrical studios, so they're all sized appropriately. And ultimately, as I said right at the beginning, we are mixing for TV, so it has to work on the telly first and foremost. And all the broadcasters will agree with that. We are mixing for TV, so it has to work on the TV. So the size of our rooms and the size of the TVs that we're using, I can't remember what size TVs we have now, but they're only about 50 inches. They're not vast TVs. And they have these speakers at the side of them. So it gives a reasonable stereo image for you to listen to and check it's working. I think that's what they're asking. Is that what they're asking?
I think so, yeah. Another one, which is a much more general question, but they want to know about some of the biggest pitfalls you found working with Atmos to stereo fold down. So you mentioned some issues with dialogue, getting lost a bit. Any other things to watch out for in those scenarios?
Not generally, the mix down very well. That was the biggest one we noticed very early on when we were doing the first series of Formula One. We were putting these guys in the center, which sounded great in Atmos. Everyone's patting each other on the back and saying that sounds amazing. We would then start watching the down mixes in stereo and thinking, crikey, they're sounding a bit quiet now. They kind of appropriate for the Atmos mix, but a bit quiet on the TV mix. We've since fiddled with it again, and you can change some of the down mix settings and fiddle with that, and you can tweak it to make it better. It wasn't huge; it was just subtle. But again, you've got to bear in mind this is an effect you're doing, and not we're kind of pushing what it's supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great effect and it's a great sound. So we would just make the Atmos, probably the dialogue in the Atmos mix, a bit louder than we would want. So to make sure it would down mix correctly into the stereo and the 5.1 down mixes. It's only subtle, probably a couple of dBs, but it was noticeable. It was noticeable.
So have we lost Simon? There he is. He's back. Good. Thought he did
one of the biggest pitfalls, which is interesting about working in Atmos, is you need to remember if the production you're working with likes changing things a lot in the online. You need to bear in mind, once you've played out your Atmos session, you can't change the length of it. So you can add time to the end, but you can't make it shorter. So if they decide to lop out 10 seconds, you're then having to play out your whole Atmos mix again to the RMU because you can't lop off the end. Most streamers want the Atmos file to match the length of the video files. So you have to play it out again. So for fast turnaround jobs, we often say, fine, we can mix it in Atmos, but please bear in mind, you can't start re-editing in the online because we'll have to keep playing it out, and it's an hour every time, so bear that in mind.
Sorry, I disappeared for a while there. My system completely froze, which also means that my chat has completely reset. So I'm completely reliant on you now, Dave and Gil, if you've got the questions up there still.
Good. Yes, as you say, it's sort of trying. There's lots of questions coming in covering different areas, so we may have to jump around a little bit. So let's have a look. How are you dealing with review videos or check videos? Quick check laybacks to video to view for your client. Comes in from Mike.
Yeah, good question. So at the farm, we have our own system called Fred, which is our own video review system. I can create a QuickTime or a ProRes and drop it into an automated folder, and it will spit out a review link and go straight to our clients. Obviously, that's stereo, and that is stereo, and that's probably been the biggest problem with lockdown. Actually, it's been reviewing with clients. I can mix great in my loft here. I've got a great setup. I'm very lucky to have some room up here, but I haven't got the clients next to me. They're not hearing the same sound. They are still signing it off in stereo. For most jobs, and hopefully when we get back into studios again, the clients will come back into the studios and hear it in Atmos, because it's a very different experience. For the F1 series, the clients would tend to sign off each episode in Atmos. They would give us some notes, they would all go, and then they'll be left with us and the producer to watch it back in 5.1 and in stereo to make sure the down mixes also work. So we make sure we've got the time to listen to all the mixes. As a mixer, I want to hear all of them, make sure they all work. But the client definitely needs to hear the stereo mix at the end to make sure it works for stereo. Because if there's any issues, they want to make sure they can hear it beforehand. And I make them sit down and watch it in stereo.
Cool. There's actually a good one here. Just as an idea, how much extra time do you need to deliver a Britain's Got Talent episode mix in Atmos compared to traditional stereo 5.1?
Well, Britain's Got Talent is still delivered in stereo currently. I think if we were ever to do that, the issue is the issue is delivering it to the broadcasters and getting it all QC'd and checked in time. That's more the problem. I think it's when we made that transition. I remember years ago we made the transition from stereo to 5.1, and I was one of the early adopters for 5.1 as well, actually, with Sky. A lot of the first documentaries we made were in 5.1, and you kind of added a lot more time, and you weren't used to it. And it was different. It was unusual. But now most things I mix, I will mix, even if it's for stereo, I will mix it in 5.1 because I'm used to it. It's also a great format, and the only thing stopping me doing that in Atmos is because we haven't got the studios, so I can't move around and I mix something in Atmos and go, tomorrow I'm in another studio. They haven't got Atmos in there, so I can't do that. Otherwise, I would probably start to do it. The biggest problem with Atmos is there's no real time bouncing. Like which you have in Pro Tools now. You can bounce out a mix very quickly, in 10 minutes and have a mix ready there. With Atmos, I kind of think the RMU is like a tape deck. So you're kind of doing a layback against tape. Think of it in that format. You've got to play out your mix. Yeah, it's a good chance to review and have a watch back, but you need to allow that time to do your layback to the RMU and then print out your stems. The stems then need limiting because they don't come out of the RMU limited. So you need to limit them, render them out, name them, check your stereo mixes also to loudness spec, render that out, and then you're there. So I don't. Something like Britain's Got Talent is quite tight turnaround. I don't see that being an Atmos anytime soon because of the tight times it's in. So who knows? As technology gets quicker and people get quicker, who knows? We might be listening to in Atmos soon.
Good. Simon, have you seen any more that you're?
Yeah, there's a couple. I know we're getting pretty close to the hour now. Are you okay for a couple more there, Nick?
Sure. Yep.
You can't say no when I ask that. That's not fair.
I can't say no.
I want to get to Ambisonics because I'm glad somebody else asked the Ambisonics question, which means I'm allowed to. But probably somebody else asked one that is probably got wider interest, which is they noticed that you've got two machines on your hardware scheme, or two Pro Tools machines. So is that pretty standard? And are you recording to one, or are they both playback machines?
There's only one Pro Tools machine in there, so everything's running in the box.
Okay.
We don't. Everything's running. We've at the farm. We've always done that. We don't have recorder machines or anything like that. We've always pushed Pro Tools to its limits. And tried to keep everything in the box. All our Atmos systems have 3 HDX cards because we just, you do need more processing in them. But other than that, it's all done in the box. All our templates have the recorder session built into them, so we can record it back in from the RMU. We tend to export renders and bring them back into the session. But we don't have separate Pro Tools system for our recorder sessions.
Cool. Yeah, I think I misread the different cards being different Pro Tools systems. But that makes more sense.
There's two matrix boxes, but as we discussed, you can get away with one of those now. But we only have one Pro Tools system, and some of those are on cheese graters still, amazingly.
Wow.
They still work really well.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So just a quick one on Ambisonics then. When you did the Igloo show, how were you converting between Ambisonics and Atmos or Atmos beds?
From memory, and it was a while back now, it was about a year ago, I was decoding them using the proprietary decoder that came with the mic. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which mic it was now, but there's a proprietary decoder that came with it. The sound recorders told me the patterns and everything, what I needed to decode it with. And then I think I used Nugent. I think I used Halo I used Halo to get it into the Atmos world. I think from memory, it worked very well. I do remember thinking this does translate really well. And obviously, then there was the whole debate about listening to it in binaural as well. That's another big thing with Atmos, which I haven't mentioned yet. It's the whole binaural world. When broadcasters are able to give us the binaural down mixes. And the binaural on headphones does sound amazing. I mean, it gives you an amazing sense of height. Not quite the height you get from a studio, but it gives a reasonable amount of height in your headphones. So once they can pass that information from an Atmos mix onto a phone and onto the iPad, onto a laptop, it'll be brilliant. a very powerful medium. And again, Ambisonics was part of that, and the sound recordist was really keen to use Ambisonics. We had a great shot where he went. The guy someone was going around him, and we used Ambisonics for that. And a lot of the atmospheres were done in Ambisonics as well. So and MS as well. So it was a huge, a huge melting pot of sounds and recording how we did them all.
Brilliant. So, actually, Dave, did you have any last burning ones that are coming through multiple times? Or?
Well, a couple multiple times about the specifics of speaker positionings on your TV. So, what's the distance between the left edge of your TV and the right edge of your left of LCR loudspeaker? 50 suggests your left and right speakers are quite a few inches away. Do the speakers feel wider than your TV as they visually are? I'm reading that, but I hope you get a sense of what that question is asking.
So they are the speakers on the side are flush with the edge of the TV.
Mm-hmm.
So in the days when we used to have big cathode ray tellies which had speakers at the sides, it's basically like that again, and it gives, rather than having the speakers underneath or hidden at the back of the telly in these very thin LCD TVs, it just gives you some decent speakers on the side, but they are literally up against the side of the TV. It looks like one unit. So the clients come in and don't realize there are actually speakers separate to the TV. It looks like one continuous unit. And people asking what the brand was, I can't remember what the brand of them is. And I tell you can't actually get them anymore. We bought the last of them up because the company doesn't make them anymore, unfortunately.
Right.
But they are literally stuck to the side of the TV. So I can get a picture of them for people if they're really that desperate to see them.
But in terms of the main monitors, that is all preset by Dolby, isn't it? Where they go.
Oh yeah. They specify exactly where all the speakers are in the studio in the main monitor. Absolutely. They all bring lasers into the studio. They'll measure everything. They check the alignment of the speakers, the sides, the rears, the ones above you. It's all calculated to the millimeter, and they do come in and check it all. Obviously, you can build a home studio without certification, but you're never going to be quite sure whether you're going to get the right sound you would do from a certified studio. But yeah, Dolby do specify exactly how they need to be in a certified room. But as I said, you don't have to have a certified Atmos room. You can build it yourself and have a go. I'm not sure which broadcasters want certified rooms now. I don't think Netflix mind anymore. But I'm not sure about all the others.
Well, I don't think there's any chance we're going to get through all these questions. We might have to get you back.
There's quite a few, isn't there?
So they're still coming in.
Yeah, we can do it again.
To do a part 2.
Those are the questions.
So yeah, I don't know, Dave. Unless you got anything really.
Well,
we've obviously missed that people are asking about.
Have you covered sort of, kind of where you check your sort of Atmos 5.1 and stereo mixers? Presumably that's just all done in the room at the time, but is there a kind of specific process for monitoring those down mixers?
No, I mean, they are, the RMU is constantly spitting out these down mixes. So in our template, we have the re-renders coming back into our template. We've got S6s, lucky to have S6s in the studio. So on the monitoring of the S6, you can choose to listen to the 7.1 mix on the near field speakers, the 5.1 down mix on the near field speakers, or with a flick of a switch, we can hear the 2.0 down mix out of the TV. And we're constantly checking them. We're constantly flicking between all those speakers and checking all the down mixes, making sure everything's working as we're expecting. But I've got to say that the down mixes, as long as you're not going crazy and not going mad with the Atmos mixes, your down mixes will work. They will work as it does with a 5.1 to a stereo down mix.
Right.
As long as you're not going crazy with the loudness, you're not going too theatrical with it, it will sound great and will down mix really well. If you start moving things around the room, inside the room, and going crazy, then you're gonna hit some walls.
So we probably ought to start wrapping up, I'd say, you know, if you did join the webinar sort of halfway through, I think the recording will go up at some point, so that maybe that your question was answered earlier on in the call. We do also have quite a lot of info up on the Avid site. There's like a getting started in Atmos kind of microsite on the Avid site. So yeah, otherwise, yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Nick. There's obviously a ton of interest in this. This is really, really golden information. I've certainly learned a ton of stuff.
Pleasure. It's been really good fun.
That's awesome. So, and thank you very much for the rest of the Avid crew for moderating things. I'll just quickly share my screen to show you what we've got coming up next week with Gaurav. So we're going for a kind of music theme next week. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining, and thanks again, Nick.
Pleasure. Been a pleasure. Great to speak to everyone. Hope you do it again.
And hopefully see you in person soon.
Yes, absolutely. See you in real life. Would be good.
Okay,
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your help.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.